seconds. All right, let me get back to you. Hi, it's Sarithkin from Ontier, and I'm here with Duke Ailghenan, who reigned 5 times in Meridies and once in Aytonville. And I'm excited to talk to him because a million people told me that he's the coolest. So we usually start these things with your origin story, and if you could tell us how and when you found the SCA, that would be great.
Sure, and thank you for having me. These have been a lot of fun, and I look forward to the other programs that you have coming up. They all look really great, so thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you.
I'm sure you would rather have fought us all, but this is good too. So I started in 1985 in East Tennessee. My D&D gaming group had heard of the SCA, but hadn't found it yet. Ironically, it had existed for many years in Knoxville, which is the largest of the cities in East Tennessee. It existed for many years and had a very thriving, and healthy group, the Barony of Thor's Mountain. But we didn't know any of that. We were just like one city south. But going to Knoxville was the big city. So at a gaming store where we had gone for miniatures or something like that, one of the guys grabbed a flyer that mentioned that there was a demo coming up, and I was the younger kid in the gaming group. They were all either 4 years or 8 years older than me, but they had all been very much looking forward to it. A couple of the guys had made mail and did archery, so they were really looking forward to the idea of it. So one day we loaded all up the car and went to the demo, and I was entranced. I was 19 years old and had read science fiction and fantasy my whole life and had played games and very much in the genre of being a geek well before it was popular. And it was fantastic. And I had played sports in high school. I played basketball. And I immediately took to SCA fighting. It met a need that I had been looking for, both from a context of the one-on-one, which is something that happens in basketball a lot. No matter how much you organize for for games that include people, you're often at the park with one other person, and so you're playing. And even when you are in a group setting, you're challenging somebody to one-on-one. And so the one-on-one context of basketball and SCA fighting was just a perfect for me. And then you add the melee part where the best melee teams are the ones that are actually working to their strengths and working with each other and understand how the role everyone has to play. So I found the perfect thing for me to move to from the sports that I had been doing in high school to the activity that I kind of wanted to do. I mean, I didn't know I wanted to do it the rest of my life then, but it sure felt perfect. So that's kind of how we got started. The SCA group in Knoxville at the time had a little bit of fluctuating membership. So when a van of us showed up, they were like, hey, welcome to the Barony. And they were actually very generous, nice, giving people anyway. But they were very happy to see us. And I remember all of their generosity and all of their interest and attention to helping us get our first shields and our first loaner weapons and helmets and garb, and letting us know when the next event is. And that was magic on day one, and it's magic I've been looking to and successfully recreating 30 some years later.
Did your whole D&D group join?
My whole D&D group joined. Not all of us stayed. Of that D&D group, or sort of the D&D group's wives, there's still one active member, a lady in Thor's Mountain who is a very, very talented artisan. But a number of us stayed through for a number of years. So far, one of my very dear friends, Doug, from back in the day, he went on to become a knight and was beloved, enjoyed the game. His name was Sir Shaltar. He was extremely beloved. Everyone loved him. and his body kept giving out on him, and his love of fighting was so great that it actually made it to where he could not enjoy being in the SCA if he could not participate. And that seems like an extreme position to take, and I wished it wasn't so, but our fighting culture is, I hope that it will change, but our fighting culture is, what have you done for me lately? Quite a bit. There's guys who actually have information and knowledge and try to share it, and there's people who's like, well, I've never fought you, so I don't know if you're any good, so I don't know if I should listen to you. And it's not the way it's done in any other sport. It's not the way it should be done in our sport, but it is the way it is, kind of like, still kind of that way. So he just could not handle it, and so he stepped away. But I always thought it was interesting that both he and I stuck around, and we both got augmentations. So it's like my D&D group was augmented.
That's great. Yeah, that is a weird thing that happens in our group. I was just talking to one of my mentors last night who is sort of feeling that way too. And it's really too bad because there's so much more to offer than just being on the field.
It is something. And I used to say for years, if I couldn't fight, well, what would I do? And now I realize that the people are so much a part of my SCA experience. All the things that they have brought to me and taught me, and the joy of just being, and the actual, we throw the word honor around. It is an honor to be friends with the people that I am friends with. I am privileged that they allow me in their company. And as cliche as that sounds, it is true. It's the truest thing I'll probably say tonight, that it is my privilege to be friends with the people who allow me to be a part of their households, a part of their groups, a part of their local groups, a part of their kingdoms, and a part of the SCA at large. So I'm thrilled. It is something that I'm hoping that we can, as a society, move past, especially from the fighting perspective. And again, as I said, it's something that you don't see in any other activity. It is quite common in boxing or martial arts that there's a trainer who is not in any condition or at any age where they will get in there and show you they know what they're talking about, but you trust that they do. So I'm hoping that we will move to that. And I'm also hoping to be a part of a generation that will age understanding that for us to be relevant, we have to stay current, and we have to stay very active within the fighting community. We have to know what the current shield and sword techniques are, and we have to know what the guards and the ways to counter those guards. It's not enough to be able to go back and say, well, back in my day we did this, because we've all had guys come up to us and say, well, back in my day we did it like this, and you're like, that doesn't work anymore. So if future generations will train to be trainers and stay current and stay focused, then they'll be able to provide value going forward. So, I mean, I see an end game where I'm no longer able to throw a shot to say, this is how it's done. But I hope that I will have taught myself how to be a reactive and intelligent enough trainer that I will be able to provide value for generations after me.
Right. And the foundational stuff like balance and power generation and movement and all of that stuff, even though we evolve, a lot of that foundational stuff will always remain relevant. And if and the Dukes are going to have that stuff down, right? So that is all stuff that can always translate.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a whole generation of kids that need to be shown how to wash the dishes.
Right. Or just how to be part of the group, right? I mean, that's another thing, people that have reigned are so good at including people because of having retinues and being sort of the ambassador for the kingdom for that amount of time, that they're really good at welcoming people in. I mean, at least that's been my experience.
The funny thing is, for me personally, I don't know that I was that good at it before I reigned, but it was a part of the being the crown persona that I did, that I kind of took from the job. I mean, I would not say that I was a particularly good ambassador before, but you wear that hat so much when you're on a throne that it rubs off. And I think that I became a better ambassador because of that experience.
All right. Well, I'm going to take you back to you. I'm enjoying this a ton, and we could talk for the whole hour just about philosophical things, and that would make me extremely happy. But I also want to learn about you. So, did you come in and use your D&D name, or where'd the name come from?
So there really ought to be an SCA rule that when you're 19, you're not allowed to come up with your own name, especially if you're as fanciful as I was. So my name originally was spelled and pronounced just like Alanon, the druid from the Sword of Shannara series by Terry Brooks, which was still fairly all the rage back in the mid 80s. And my reasoning was I knew I wanted to have to be an Irish persona. And Alanon the Druid was a druid, and druids were Irish or Celtic. And so that to me sounded like it would be a good name. And there was a local hero in our kingdom that people told you about your very first event, John the Bear Killer, called the Bastard. So of course, like every other kid in the SCA, as soon as you heard people calling each other bastards and getting away with it, you're like, well, I want to be a bastard too. So I was Alanon Macshi, son of the She, son of the fairy, which I thought, well, that'd be a funny name. It's probably what they called their bastard kids, that they were kids of the fairy or whatever, kids of the fae, So there, I came up with that name and it stuck. And then it was kind of my cross to bear for a while. I kept changing the spelling, and then I changed sort of how I pronounced it from the hard A to the softer A. And then after I won Crown in the mid 90s, won my first crown, a very lovely gentleman by the name of Master Rory came and said, would you like help with your name? And I was like, I don't think there's any help we can do for it. I put my name in and my device up for, I submitted it and it came back, and I wished I had kept it. I should have framed it. But when I put my name and device in the first time, it came back with red letters across the top, ha, ha, ha. So I was like, Master Rory, I don't think there's any way that's going to, anything that can be done. He's like, let me see what I can do with it. And he did a fantastic job of heraldically reverse engineering my name. So the spellings that you see of it now with all the extra consonants and that's just, that's the good work on his part.
That's cool.
And I've been told, the little research that I did, that it was an actual early period Irish king with that same name, with the name of Ailghenan or whatever, and it became the modern Hallahan at some point. So that's how it progressed through the time. But so that's the long and the short of my stupid name. That's now a pretty good name, as long as you don't try to pronounce it.
Cool. So when you first started fighting in Meridies, who were your mentors?
So in the barony of Thor's Mountain, we had Sir Siegfried das Wilterkind, called the Bastard of Saxony, who had been a squire of John the Bear Killer. John the Bear Killer was from Memphis, and Memphis is all the way across the state. Idiots in Tennessee are fond of saying it's closer from the easternmost part of Tennessee. It's closer from Johnson City to Canada than it is from Johnson City to Memphis. And it's actually true. It's almost an 8-hour drive across the state in Tennessee. But Sir Siegfried was very much a fighting mentor, and there were a number of other young fighters in the group that made up a very healthy group. And then Sir Gwydion was a influence both from a fighting perspective and from a life perspective. And we had another gentleman who had just recently got knighted right after we started. And I was just like, man, that guy's going to ask me to become squire, because he just had to vibe, that this guy was going to collect squires and start his little household. And I was like, oh, and I don't want to be his squire, and I'm going to get blackballed, and I'll never get to be a squire. And I think I would like to be a squire. All these things run through your head when you're 19. So I went to the gentleman that I respected the most, which was Sir Gwydion, who I just thought had some amazing lifestyle presence. He really embodied the "don't worry, be happy" kind of philosophy. And he may have changed it to "don't worry, have a beer," or "relax, have a home brew." Um, Kind of a thing. But I went to him. He was working at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, and I went to his office and I met with him. And I said, "I think this guy's going to do this and that, and and I'm really concerned, and I'm going to get blackballed." And he said, "Okay, well, that's not how it works. But what I can do is I can extend you a place in my household if you would like to join it, and we can take some time and see if it works out. I'll call you a shieldman. You can have a gray belt. This is all unofficial. There's no official SCA stuff for that, but you can have a gray belt with my token on it, so people will know that um, are under my watchful eye. And when you're ready to take a night, come back and talk to me. And if it turns out that it's not me, let me know who you're looking for, and I will find that person for you, and I will see if I can arrange for you to meet them and see if it will work out. And I'll do my best for you." Well, I didn't want anyone else for a night. So when the time came around for us to rediscuss it, I gladly took his belt, and I was Sir Gwydion's squire for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, 9 years, 9 years, I think.
Cool. Did you start out sword and shield?
I did. I fought a lot of sword and shield. It was the primary thing that they taught you, but we very much in that group, it was common. Matter of fact, it would be rare that if 3/4 of the way through fighter practice, someone didn't yell melee. And from that point on, you meleeed through the rest of practice. And so, I picked up a pole arm really early to use in melee and really enjoyed that. And I think that led me eventually down the road to spear. And I hope that over time I've become a pretty good spearman. And competent in most of the weapon styles. I have a long way to go in many of them, but competent, knightly even, but certainly not an expert in anything, I think, other than spear and sword and shield.
What do you prefer, melee or tourney?
I love them both equally. I like practicing. I even go so far as to say I love practicing for singles, and I loathe practicing for melee. And I do it, and I try to put as glad a heart as I can in and just go to do it because I know it's necessary, and I know it's helpful to get the relatively newer people, or the people who aren't fighting as much, who don't go to a lot of wars, to get ready for their 1 or 2 big wars of the year kind of a thing. I find it redundant. I don't find it necessary, and I actually don't think that there's that much to learn about melee. I don't understand why we don't pick it up and just do it. But it's like 10 years in, you're still telling people, you should stay together. You should try to flank that unit. You know, you're always looking for a numerical advantage. So you've got to create it. If we don't actually have it, we've got to create it. So, that's what you're trying to do here. And then it's like, well, why did you flank them if you weren't going to attack them? It's I find a lot of the practice of melee to be redundant. The act of melee is pure joy. If we're just fighting and it's not training for melee, then I enjoy it. And once we're at war, any drudgery I thought that the practice for getting to war was, or any of the drudgery of putting your camp together, all that stuff goes away for the magic of the actual war itself. Melee is just such an incredible place to lose yourself. I can actually lose myself and relax and enjoy melee in a different way than I do singles, because in singles I'm very hyper aware of what's happening to me all the time, whereas in melee I am macro aware of everything and not focusing on any one thing but looking through the whole field. And that's just a beautiful way to relax. And then when you get to do it either like at wars where it's a really large open field and you're not seeing any cars and you're not seeing any mundane tents where you are, a great example would be like the woods battle at Penzik. You can just lose yourself to the fantasy and totally immerse yourself in the otherworldly experience that can be SCA melee combat.
Very cool. Um, What kind of shield did you start with, and do you still fight with the same type of shield?
No, me and all my guys in the D&D group made the same size heater shields when we first started, and we were shown how to hold them and how to move. And this is a Tennesseeism or a Southernism. Bless their hearts, it's really all they knew how to actually show us and teach us was how to do these movements. I still remember the movement that they taught us, where you're never supposed to cross a feet, but it was very linear, forwards and backwards, and this is your movement, and then this is how you throw shots and everything. And I was like, wow, this feels really constricted. I really kind of like to move more. And it's like, has it I didn't say it then, but in basketball, you moved at all angles. Everything was fair game. So it's like, have you guys ever thought to move on the 45 as you're approaching somebody? You know, but that's just, that was kind of where fighting was, at least in Northern Meridies in 1985. I I remember when I authorized the person they brought over to authorize the fight, they said lay on, and I faked like an offside and came back and hit him in the head. And he was like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. You guys don't fake for some reason. Why?" But they didn't do it. They felt like it was slow and clumsy and just opened yourself up. So there were not a lot of fakes thrown. And to this day, I still don't understand why people don't incorporate fakes and feints more in their game. I've kind of made a career of it, but in basketball, if you can't fake and feint, then you can't get a shot off.
So it sounds like you've taken a lot of like your footwork and your body motion from basketball and incorporated it into your fight.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. When I teach sort of conceptually how I approach fighting, I'll mention, that's where I come from, and you can take a lot of different things. There's a lot of great fighters have brought something in from athletics that you would think is an unconventional um, um, launching point, but they each have something that they can bring in. And what mine brought in, basketball, when even when it's in a team sport, oftentimes you're still in a one-on-one situation, which is SCA fighting, SCA singles fighting. The person is 3 feet away from you or less, which is a lot of SCA fighting. And then from an offensive perspective, you're trying to get a fraction of a second advantage, and you're not sure yet what you're going to do. You could drive if they bite one way. You could shoot. You could, you could pass. They call it basketball a triple threat position, which looks an awful lot like how I fight, from a triple threat position, where you can either pass the ball, dribble the ball, or shoot the ball. So from that position and from that mindset, you're looking for a fraction of a second advantage to get basically up on your opponent. And I took those concepts of playing basketball to fighting. And so a lot of what I do is I'm looking for that fraction of a second advantage. And I will create it in many different ways, but it can be really slight feints, and it is very slight feints. The more advanced of a fighter you are, I'm hardly putting any motion or movement into those fakes or feints at all. They're as subtle as they can be, because the person that you're fighting against, if they're really a good fighter, they're not going to move for this kind of stuff. That's not a convincing fake for them. So, I try to be as subtle as I need to be, and I try to incorporate as much of my whole body into the fake or the feint as possible. Same thing in basketball. If you just do this, the guy's not going to jump and you're not going to dribble around them. But if you bend your knees and you flex your hips as you come up like that, it looks like you're starting a jump shot. And same thing with most of my fakes and feints. You bend the knee and start moving your shoulders around, and that is a significantly more convincing fake or feint. So, but yes, the easy answer to the question is I absolutely brought a lot of basketball into how I fight.
That's super cool. I've never actually heard somebody talk about motion in terms of basketball, but it makes perfect sense in my brain.
So my dream scenario going forward is that a professional basketball player would let me train them. What they would be able to bring to the game would just be horrifying. I mean, probably at a minimum, they're 6'6".
Right.
They're 200 pounds of nothing but muscle. And they've got a quickness that we rarely ever see. And of course, the endurance to train all day.
Yeah, that would be some ferocious stuff there. Yeah. So, did you know from the beginning that you wanted to be a knight?
Well, it's a yes and no question. Yes, because that's what the SCA had to offer in sort of that tier or category. I kind of always thought I wanted to be a hero. And the difference in my mind is the hero forgets all about, the knightly quality of humility. And humility is a virtue that I sorely lack, and I feel like I work on every day. And I've got some fantastic examples throughout my life. But, you know, I have no humility, and I, I struggle with it. I, I wanted to be Beowulf, you know. I wanted to, before the fight, brag about what I had done and then listen to the brags of my opponent. And that's not particularly knightly in the Arthurian chivalric sense. Um, so, I wanted to be a Norse or Celtic hero. And what we had was the Order of the Chivalry. And it's been a really interesting path to get to that. And my lack of humility definitely made that a 10-year journey, or helped make that a 10-year journey, because my prowl was probably there fairly early on. But in Meridies has a long tradition and history of wanting a more complete and more mature package than just prowl. And, I was a very good example of that. It took a long time for me to get knighted, and I was like, I'm kicking so much knight ass. How am I not getting knighted? And someone would say, probably because you say things like that.
So, did you go for a crown before you got knighted?
I did, as probably a strategic move on my part to get more noticed and to get more renown. I was fairly well known in the northern part of our kingdom. I had off and on been mostly a college student through all that period, so I didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't think much further than 3 or 4 hours of travel. So I was well known in the northern part of the kingdom, and not as particularly well known in the southern part of the kingdom. Meridies was significantly larger back then. It included what is Glen Aubin now. So it's 12, 13 hours from where I live to where, say, Duke Steppenwolf lived in Shreveport, Louisiana. That's practically Texas. So it was, I was not particularly well known in other parts of the kingdom. So Crown List was a way to get some renown. And I looked at it as practice for when I really was prepared and ready to enter Crown List with hopes and thoughts of winning. So I wanted to do my very best, and I would have reigned as well as I could had I won. But I mean, I wasn't the fighter that I was even just a couple of years later. So I fought. I actually had a very good showing. Um, and one of the unbelts that I fought in the semifinals or quarterfinals, whichever one is worse, he went on to get knighted long after. And I was like, what the hell? I beat him. Again, lack of humility may have cost me another couple of years. But no, I strategically fought in Crown List so that I would understand and appreciate and experience Crown List, and also help get better known.
So
I fought once before
once.
before I was knighted.
Okay. And is the culture in Meridies that everyone fights crown, or you just fight if you want to win?
So I'm not sure what the culture is today, but I can say safely that when I left, the culture still very much was, you don't fight in Crown List till you're prepared to actually win. Crown, being crown is expensive, and the responsibilities are great. And so you need to be where, you need to be financially and socially, and where you're going to be, and I actually disagree. I feel like Crown List is an experience, and And it's a trial, and the more people that are involved in it, the more people get to experience the magic of it, and the greater the trial is for the champion who does come out of that list. But the culture there was, you need to wait until you're ready. So that's why crown lists were between 20 and 25, 26 people for a very long time.
And are they double a limb out there?
Normally, yeah, normally double a limb.
Okay.
And now most of the time I think they're best 2 of 3 as well.
Okay. So going to Atenville was probably a little bit of a difference for you. The lists are quite a bit bigger there.
They are. And I love how a lot of people they're being a part of the process. They're being a part of the magic. Do they think that they'll win? Some of them probably not. But I enjoy that they're a part of the process and get to be a part, because Crown List is amazing. It's I would fight in every Crown List that they had if there wasn't the risk of winning and the responsibility of winning. I love it. It is like no other tournament. I think there are harder tournaments, and I think there are more prestigious tournaments. I think there are tournaments that are a better reflection of your overall prowess. But there's nothing like the magic of Crown List and the psychological battles that happen, that people put on themselves and lose to themselves. And I enjoy it. I thrive on it. It's palpable. I can taste it when I'm at Crown List.
How do you prepare yourself psychologically for a list that you want to win?
So it's part of my teaching method. I train not necessarily to win. I know that's cliche. I train to try to eliminate mistakes and to be able to do repeatable things, and then have enough experience and recent practice so that if I have to be improvisational, I can. And I train at practice for the pickups at an event the same way that I train for Crown. I have the same mindset. I have the same focus. So I don't want to be pushing buttons and I got to put myself in Crown mode. I want to fight as well as I possibly can mode. And I want to not make mistakes. And I want to, if I get beat, I get beat, but it won't be because I dropped my guard to do something stupid. It'll be because my opponent bested me. So if you train for that, and you train to, you have a very clear understanding of what the best version of you is, and you train to that, and then you know where you're wanting to get better and improve, then you're not training for Crown. You're just training to be the best fighter that you can be all the time. So I do not do anything different when I'm preparing for Crown. I just fight, and I fight all the time. Same as I do normally.
What are the other parts of your training methodology?
That it's more important to reduce errors and to reduce wasted movement than it is to do new and fancy fun things. People ask me all the time, because I have a lot of interesting things I think that I do, and people are like, well, how do I do that? And I'm like, wow, I so want to be able to show you how to do that, but you got to hold your shield up. You don't need to learn how to do a special shot if you just get hit in the head all the time, if you take 2 steps and are completely out of guard. So I emphasize the guard, probably the thing that I emphasize the most. It's like, pick one. I understand that some people have a theory that, well, you should be well versed in all these different ways to hold your sword and shield, or how to hold your weapon or whatever. That's fine. Be as well versed as you can. Pick the very best one that you can do that is going to give you the maximum amount of offense, but also the maximum amount of defense that allows you the most movement that you can do, and focus on it and make it your religion. become one with that guard, so that the muscle memory is things have gone weird. Well, when things go weird, what do? Do you fall into your good guard, or do you fall into your lazy guard? Do you fall into your sloppy guard? So if you train as hard as you can to stay in good guard, when things go crazy, you'll fall into good guard. You'll revert to good guard. I see people revert to the thing that they do the most, which is a lazy guard. It's like, well, be in no guard or guard. But there should not be a lazy guard. There should just be the one that actually is true and right, or you're far enough away to be in no guard at all. And just drop your shield and sword completely and have those two things. But you see people as they start to get closer and they're starting to go into these sort of weird half guards or not quite there yet guards or all these different variants. And it's like, you're going to do that at some point during this fight. You're not going to be as out of range as you think you are.
Right. Right.
So I really, I come back to the point that it's almost, people are like, can we talk about something else? It's like, okay, reluctantly, I'll talk about something else. But go look at your guard in a mirror, man. It looks terrible.
Video is so good for letting you know what you're really doing and not what you think you're doing. So,
yep.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I have a guard that is me relaxed, and when I shouldn't be relaxed, and it's something I've been working very hard on eliminating, because it's stupid. Yeah.
it's the hardest thing to fix, because it's the thing you least want to work on. People want to work on offense, and I get it. It is the fun part of the fighting. The hitting is fun. But I try to teach people, you should take pride in your ability to not get hit. You should take just as much pride in that and get the same amount of joy that you can be in a fight and let the fight tell you how to win it. Because fights are a conversation. And if you don't take the time to listen to what your opponent's telling you and you just go try to win it, you may have missed something very important. But if you can survive long enough, the fight may tell you what it needs to happen to win that fight. But if your guard sucks, it's not going to matter. You're not going to hear the words.
Right. So when you worked on the humility or whatever, and you were offered, I don't know how to say that in any other terms than you talked about it. I'm not judging. Did you get a vigil for your knighting?
I had a party.
You had a party
that served as a vigil. Like every generation, we thought we were the rebel generation. We were changing things. We were going to do things differently. Of course, we were just doing things the same way mostly the same way, or the same way they will be again. So we were going, instead of having a stuffy vigil, we were going to have a big house party, and I would stay in my vigil tent, and people could come in and see me, but if I got too sloppy and had to go to sleep, then they were going to miss out, kind of a thing. But I stayed up most of the night and heard a lot of great pieces of advice. I wish I could remember some of them.
So everybody got to party except for you, who was in the tent. So
I got to party too. I just didn't get to walk around like they did. Okay. The party came to me.
Yeah. I have the same problem with my vigil. I can't remember much happened at all. I think it's too much at one time. Like there's just too much coming in to retain it all.
I'm not really a huge fan of vigils. I understand what they're supposed to be, and I've seen them to be, on the edge of spiritual for the vigilant, and be just an amazing experience for them. And I've also heard, by going to vigils, the same advice given over and over again, that I really hope the person has gotten by that point, just by being in the SCA. And it's rare that I go to a vigil anymore these days. If I've taken a vested interest in the person, I will at some point tell them, I probably won't come to your vigil. You're going to see me the rest of your life. And I'll be there. I'll be there when you need me, whether you want me or not.
I'm going to use that, because I'm not a huge fan of vigils either, because I feel like they're very contrived. But I got in trouble for not going to a couple because it was a statement, even though it was not a statement. So I'm going to use that because, yeah, if I'm going to go and say something, I want it to be genuinely something I want to say, and I don't want to just say something for the sake of saying it.
Yeah,
Vigils have gotten out of control in my kingdom. We won't even go there, but it's out of control.
that might be an SCA thing. And you know what? I don't dislike vigils enough to say I think we should stop having vigils or that we should change vigils. Just don't expect me to be a big part of them. I'll be around for the other bits.
Well, right, the important parts. So, how long after you were knighted did you win your first crown?
Okay, so I fought in the first crown list I fought in was in 93, 1993, and I was a squire, and I fought. I did pretty well, and I enjoyed the experience. 2 years later, I got knighted. I was knighted in 95, and not long after then, it wasn't the same year, but it was the next year. I was pretty full of myself at that point. Again, this humility thing will be with me the rest of my life.
But you know what? Like, I just have to interrupt you because the fact that you admit that this is something that you're working on, like, is actually a step to humility or part of humility, right? Like, it's admitting that you're not perfect. So,
Possibly. This is also the most politically correct way I've ever said it. I've also told a large group of people I'll work on humility when I'm done being the best effing fighter in the SCA. So yeah, I actually, because some of my heroes truly take the humility virtue to heart, it is important to me. I have seen how it's given them the opportunity to be able to both provide better counsel and to listen to people better. When you shut your face and actually listen to people with no intent to say anything whatsoever, then you can listen and understand and learn. And then, and only then, after you've thought about it, can you provide good counsel. And it's normally only the people who have some sense of actual humility that will put aside their personal thoughts. I mean, as soon as someone starts talking to me, I'm trying to figure out, can I interrupt you there and fix your problem? You know, but that is where humility comes into such an important play. It comes in a good play there. Be quiet, listen, understand, empathize, then run it through your personal experiences to see if you can provide something. And if you can't, just provide some comfort and some solace, and say that you'll continue to think about it and help them if you can. That's where humility comes into play. And I aspire to that.
all right, cool. All right, go back to your journey. I'm sorry, we got caught
So, so in the summer of 95, I was knighted at an event called Border Raids, which was a Meridiers versus the Mid Realm in northern Tennessee, and it had, for some reason, it got moved to July, and that's like, you cannot get any hotter in our time of year than that. And it was 103 or 104, maybe 105, which is not hot to me anymore because I live in Arizona. It's 105 every day. It's, we go through a 2 or 3 month period where it's always over 100. But it was 105 with 98% humidity. And we were pouring buckets of sweat during the nighting. And just, it was miserable. And we tried to fight. We got through 1.5 battles and called a hold in the middle of the battle. And both sides just decided we'd flip a coin this year. And that was the end of the fighting. And then people went back to their tents, and we filled up kiddie pools and went from there. So that's summer of 95. The next year in 96, I wanted to win Crownless, and I wanted to rank. And I'd seen some things that over the course of my experience now, I think are unbelievably trivial, that I was like, well, I could do a better job, and I'd like to show the kingdom how it could be done, kind of a thing. So I'm ready for this. And now that I'm knighted, I've got that pressure off. I'm ready. So I got ready for fall crown list. And I really put a lot into it that I would not do normally for a normal tournament. I stayed up nights. I stayed up very late working on my garb because at the time I sometimes had to sew my own garb. Now I'm very lucky because I'm not a very good seamster at all. Um, so I was working on garb, I was working on banners, I was working on things, I was working on on all of the peripheral things that can go with crown. Uh, I got to the event as early as I possibly could. I said, I'm not even going to have any drinks at all on Friday night. I'm not going to do anything. And I'm going to go to bed early. And I went to bed early and I got up early. I got early up enough to go have breakfast and get a shower. And I was one of the first two people at armor inspection. And I went in thinking, I don't know how can I lose? This is my list. And I won one and lost two. And before the list was over, I was standing out in a field having a conversation with myself saying, what the hell did you just do? What? You fought terribly. You did nothing like you normally do. Stop it. Just chill out, man. And I was really having I don't normally do this, but I was having a straight up talking to myself conversation. So maybe I was also, I'd been up too long, too much before. So I said, relax. You're good enough to win one of these. So just start entering them. You're going to enter them until you win them, and relax. Quit putting so much pressure on yourself. If you need to do a little bit, do a little bit, but do not do the same thing. Do not stay up working on stuff and overly emphasize that, and treat it like a regular tournament. The thing you like most about SCA events is getting to the event on a Friday when it's a weekend event, and enjoying seeing people that you haven't seen in a long time, talking with them all night long if need be, getting up just as late as you possibly can. There's no such thing as breakfast, and as they're saying, last call for armor inspection, you're running as fast as you can to make it, and then you barely, you're like apologizing to the mistress of the list. I'm so sorry. I'm so, could you please enter me? I'm sorry. Yeah, I've inspected it. So I took that approach. I just relaxed. I won the next one, and I've not lost a crown list since. And I just had to treat it like a regular tournament, which is part of where I started creating my philosophy of fight to be good, don't fight to win tournaments. And so, I just relaxed and enjoyed myself and let me be me.
That's cool. So what did you enjoy the most about your first reign? You didn't. I don't know.
Oh gosh, no, I loved it. I have probably every time that I have entered Crown List again was with the intent to reign and in an attempt to recapture the magic of that first reign. And I've been mostly successful. It was the most amazing experience. I went into it again because I come from a place of no humility. I went into it with, this is going to be my stage. I'm the rock star. I'm the, and I actually, I play in bands, and still, everyone gets a chance, I still do rock and roll. So I very much had this is going to be the stage. I'm going, this is going to be a lot of fun, but this is how I want to do things. I had a lot of young people who were in the sort of same peer group as me, who were a part of the reign. My consort, a very dear friend, Countess Kalea, she had been in the SCA for a couple of years. So she was still really super new. She came this close to her first award being a county or her rose, but they gave her an AOA right before. So that's how still new she was. But she was fantastic. Early on, we realized how much work it was to do and to do it well. And so we opened ourselves up to the best advice that we could get. We were very fortunate to have some old hands with our new group. So it was a really good mix of rebel energy, and I wouldn't do that if I was you. But we had Baroness Jocelyn, who was a part of many other retinues and who was a close friend, helped keep us straight on a lot of things. And then I was so fortunate. Clay and I were both so fortunate. Master Andrixos of Callantyre Trim had moved into the kingdom not not too long before, and he was at Crown List, and somewhere towards the second or the last fight, right before the finals, he'd kind of come up to me and it was like, just chill out, relax, things are going well. But as soon as we got, to the finals, he's like, okay, so if you need a herald, I'm here for you for that part of it, everything else. And he kind of insinuated himself, but it was really good. I didn't, it was the right thing. I'm so glad he did. And then as soon as it was done, I was sort of like, Master Andrixos, you've been a Kingdom Herald or a Crown Herald, Court Herald before, haven't you? He's like, number of times. I'm like, how would you like to be one again? So we got this well-oiled, well-established protocol droid to be a part of our, oh, we're taking over the world. And so he was very, very helpful. It was a great experience. And he helped also continue to, even things that he wasn't familiar with, but he'd be like, you should actually find out what the tradition is for this. You can choose not to do it if you don't want to, but it shouldn't be out of ignorance. It should be because you decided you wanted to buck tradition. Don't do it out of just sheer ignorance. So he was very helpful, as well as some of the other old hands who were part of our young rebels taking over the world, the Young Turks. And it was just fantastic. And not long going into it, I realized, the joy. I probably everyone you've talked to has talked about just the intensity of that connection that you have when you give someone an award of arms. And I mean, the last reign that we did was my 6th, and I still love giving an award of arms. I still want to make it special. I still want to find a way to connect with the person that's getting this award. I still value it. I still know, but when I didn't have that going in. I took that away, and I understand, but the first time you've done that, as soon as you're done with your opening coronation court stuff, and you actually get into oh, this is what it means to give someone an award of arms. This is, so then you place value to that. So then you can, this is what to give them a sort of a grant level service award means. And then there's value to that. And so by the time you're involved in a peerage, then you very much are aware of just how important all of it is. And I came away from that. I think we all came away from that experience, changed people, more mature, though not mature, but more mature and more open-hearted on the traditions of the society and why they became traditions and what the value in those traditions were. And maybe I wasn't so much of the young Turk wanting to just shake things up just because. It was magical.
What's your favorite Meridian tradition?
I didn't know it was when I was in Meridies, but I know it now. We eat our dead, and what I mean by that is we kill our royalty. Whether I'm not saying the populace or the kingdom kills them, but the royalty typically comes up with fun and unique ways to have a demise, and it's been a lot of fun being part of them. It's been a lot of fun watching them. I've seen almost every variant now of them, so that when someone in another kingdom actually, like, well, we did something weird and cool, we died. I'm like, how'd you do it? Oh, that way? Yeah. Neat. Neat. Oh, on a shield? Oh, neat. Yeah. Valkyries. Cool. Yeah, Valkyries are cool. Seen it. No, I didn't see yours, but but we not always, but more times than not, our crown die. And so coming up with fun ways to do that and to make decoronation, it's cathartic to die. The reign is over. I didn't place my crown on someone else. I killed over for whatever reason, and so that reign is done. Let's go do this. Let's go have fun differently.
So how it was raining different in Atenvelt than in Meridies?
Every kingdom has its own flavors and nuances. And so just trying to pick up on them and trying to be respectful of them. I'm awfully full of myself, but I wanted to be respectful of the things that were important to Aidenvelters. And again, if I was going to do something differently, it was going to be because I wanted to do it differently, not because I didn't take the time to actually ask, well, how would this be seen or how would this be viewed? And I was very fortunate to have as part of our overall council, uh, some very strongly opinionated persons with regard to how things should be done in Aidenville. And, so we tried to be as respectful as we could with as much, but being who we were also very, it was like, well, we're not going to do that. um, and it has changed since I've been here. But, and I hope this isn't airing too much dirty laundry, but I felt like when I first got here, and even as we were getting ready for Parts of the Rain, that Aidenvelt was a little too much the king and the queen for me. Because where I'm from, if you said the king, all capital letters, and the queen, and it didn't have all capital letters and the same amount of exclamation marks, John the Bear Killer was going to drive his butt from Memphis to wherever you were and kick it 96 different ways and remind you that we are nothing without the queen. It starts with the queen. It is the queen and the king. At best, the royalty starts with the queen and moves down to the king. And it just felt a little flipped. And I think that it is different now. I don't think that Amber and I had anything to do with it. I think that Aidenvelt was just slowly kind of catching up with the rest of the world, that it was an equal partnership, and that the royalty is very much a duality of what the consort and what the crown, with that. They are intertwined and they are equal. And I think it's become more of that. But when I first started doing that, that was something that sort of got the hairs on the back of my neck to raise. It's a great kingdom. Aidenville has been amazing.
I was talking to somebody, I can't remember who it was, and they were telling me that in their kingdom, the queen is actually number one on the order of precedence, because it should be all about the consort, right? Like, I mean, that's how the game started. And I thought that was super cool, because I don't think I think the king's number one in our kingdom too. We sort of have the same thing. Sometimes people forget it's the crown and not just the king. But
maybe they don't. It shouldn't be a 1 or a 2. It could just be they're 1 and 2, or they occupy both these spots.
Right, they could be 1 and 1. So
yeah.
I think that's cool. So, what's your favorite tradition in Aidenvelt?
I like that the crowns and consorts crown themselves. I think that's an interesting turn on it. I even understand some of why they do it. Kind of it was a little bit of a, goodbye, West Kingdom. We're doing things our way now thing. But you know what? Every kingdom that has come from another kingdom has some of those. We have to assert ourselves in our individuality. So this is one of the things we're going to do different. And if there was something that you weren't crazy about the way the other kingdom did, or even if you did like it, you're trying to assert your own independence and originality. So I like that they do that. I'm comfortable with other ways. I have been crowned by my SCA heroes in Meridies. I have been crowned by members of the populace who only had an AOA in Meridies. And I've been crowned with everybody in between in Meridies, since I guess I've done it enough times. And none of it's wrong. What's right is that it happens, but it's not wrong who necessarily does it. You can find a way to convey the right kind of power and gravitas to the moment. But it's pretty cool when, the guy just, whoever it is just wins crown list, and they come out and give him the cornet and they take it and like, bam, I did this. I did this. And that's kind of cool. And then they kind of do the same thing with their, coronations. Like, crowned by my hand. So I like it. I don't necessarily think everyone has to do it or everyone should do it, but I still like it.
That's cool. It's interesting. let's see. What do you think there's a difference in your role as a Duke as compared to a knight?
So it did something our first reign. We did something our first reign that we wanted to do. We hadn't seen it done, but it was really cool in our heads when working on the ceremony of how we wanted to do things. And we put a gaze on all the members of the peerage individually based on their order, and basically said, if you enter into this union of fealty with us, this is what we actually expect of you, and this is your job, and this is your role for the reign. And a lot of it had to do with teaching your particular art skill things. So the knights were encouraged. I think the gaze we put upon them was, we would ask them to put as much emphasis during our reign on the war effort as they normally would for tourney season. And then we asked the laurel to consider teaching something they had never done before to someone they had never taught before, that kind of thing. Same thing with the Order of the Pelican. We asked them to find a way to serve that they had never served before, and to learn a new way to do so, those kinds of things. But when it came to the royal peerage, which I see as on equal footing with all the peerages, I understand that some people like bestowed peers, royal peerage, whatever. To me, I just see peerage, and it's kind of how we thought of it in Meridies. It was the peerages, which included the royal peerage. The gaze we put upon them was to be the counsel for this crown and all the crowns that they possibly could going forward. They have a unique perspective that other council, parts of the council won't have, and that they should find ways to support the crown, even when they don't agree with the crown. And I believe my responsibility as a Duke is to, especially when I don't agree with the crown, to be there, to be a part of their reign as best as I can, to be an active member, and to, advocate for the kingdom if I think the kingdom needs advocating for, and the populace if I believe the populace needs. But it can also just be to provide a level of service that the other peerages don't have the same experience to be able to provide. And so I do think that royal peers should have a responsibility, and it should always be to the kingdom and the populace. And they can find small ways and big ways to serve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I'm just like, am just floored by how passionate and how thoughtful you are. I know why everyone said, "Oh, you have to interview him," because it's amazing. So yeah, we've gone a little bit over, so I'm going to skip a whole bunch of parts, but I really appreciate you being so passionate and honest and thoughtful with me tonight. So we're going to go to the final 10. But
thank you. That was fast. I can't believe how time has flown.
Know that I could talk to you probably for another hour, but I won't subject you to that.
Well, look, please don't consider it subject to me. This has been a pleasure and a privilege, and it's nice to feel like I'm in the SCA during this COVID-19 pandemic. This is the most I felt like being a part of the SCA since this thing started. So I can't even tell you how much I value this experience. So please continue with the same energy and humor with everyone else. And I look forward to watching them. And if you ever want to chat again, whether it's like this or if it's in person, I look forward to that.
Well, I would really appreciate that. And hopefully, events will start again next year. And I'm going to come down to Estrella and use my good guard with you.
I look forward to it.
All right. So question number 1, if you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
So I actually heard this question asked one of the few times I popped in, and remembered that I didn't want to soak this up so much that I felt like it was all canned. That is one of the questions I heard, and I came up with my great answers too. And the last time I fought His Majesty Uther, I enjoy that fight so much. So I could say Uther. Every time I fight His Grace Conrad Breakring, I have a level of fear because I'm so afraid he's going to hit me and hurt me that it spikes my adrenaline up like this. Or what about my my dear friends and people who sometimes can actually get through my thick head and train me, His Grace Branos or His Grace Romvolder. What about one of them? And it's like, oh, those would be good answers too, because you always want to fight with them. And it turns out the person I most want to fight is my real world bestie, His Grace Seth of Newcastle, of Meridies. I want to fight. I want to get mad like we always get mad about something stupid. And then I want us to go have beers and wings at whatever beer and wing place we can. And I want to feel a sense of normalcy.
Okay, that's a good answer. You know, Mineko just reminded me that I forgot to look at your sword. Do you have your sword?
I do. I have it here.
Let's look at your sword and then we'll go back.
So let me describe it. It's 1.25 inches shaved rattan. It's as light as probably most people have ever felt. It's 36 inches long and it has a thrusting tip. I get the pre-made thrusting tips that Master Eirik of the Mid-Realm sells at his shop, munitions grade something. Look him up. He's a great guy. But I buy these tips by the dozens. I make 10, 12, 13 swords a year. I consider them sport equipment. I don't invest any emotion into them from a standpoint of, oh, I broke my favorite sword. I expect to break my sword. I hope a sword lasts a month. I'm happy if it lasts a month. So I use shaved rattan. The purpose, what I get of it, and I'm probably one of the lighter hitters in the SCA of my tier fighting. I don't have a problem with that. I will try to hit harder when someone really wants me to, but with this, I can swing as hard as I possibly can, and I can't break a person. It feels like historical swords of this length from a standpoint of picking up and holding and balance. It's relatively light, and I can do lots of things with it. I can go tip forward and use my tip to set range or to manipulate openings, and not have any issue pulling it right back to guard. You know, I can come back to guard quickly, and then I can launch into shots. And I appreciate the lightness of it, and I understand that it's part. I consider it to be part of the game that someone's going to say, I could use a little bit more, or light. I'm like, okay, we'll just keep doing it. I'm relatively successful, so light swords have worked for me.
Can we see the handle?
Sure, I do shave it. I want it to be slightly thicker than a pistol grip. And again, I try to shave my grips to what I felt like actual swords feel like. I want to be able to get that plane or lozenge shape against this part of my hand, so that when I squeeze it and manipulate my hand, the sword has lots of movement, you know, and that's all hand, you know. And if you add those bits of hand squeezes into various parts of shots or preparation of shots or the actual impact, then you get a little bit more oomph out of that. And I'm going for velocity and percussion. I definitely believe that if this pops, it may not hurt someone, but they can tell it's a telling blow, and good enough.
And do you use a trigger?
I use a trigger because the conventions of combat say we either have to have a trigger or a lanyard. That's a really dumb rule. It's not one that I could have fixed when I was on the board, because you know what? You don't actually go into the board of directors with this laundry list of stuff you're going to do. You actually react to the stuff that comes up, not the stuff. There's not a lot of top down. So you're actually reacting to things coming up, and it never really had a chance to come up. I think it's a stupid rule that we have to have lanyards or triggers. You know, I understand why. I think the rule should be changed to, at the discretion of the marshal in charge, lanyards or triggers could be put into effect for specific tournaments. You're fighting in a church and you don't want to break the stained glass? Great. But I can't stand, it drives me absolutely crazy that marshals are checking my freaking trigger or handguard on the Penzic field when people are shooting and throwing things at me.
I get it. I get it. All right. So we will go back to the questions. 2, who would you like to see reign in your kingdom?
Wow. There's a lot of worthy people, and I'm going to be very excited for if and when they all get the opportunity. But I think Sir Valora would make an outstanding crown, and her consort, Sir Nikita, would be just a fantastic consort. And I actually hope they win in that order. If Nikita was to win, that'd be great too. But I'd really love for Valora to win. I'd love to see her continue to inspire the people of the populace of this kingdom the way she has, and I think she'd be able to do so in even new ways as their crown. So I'd love to see her win.
Yeah, she's fantastic. If you could talk stick with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
It's a boring answer, but the most value I've ever gotten talking stick with anyone are the conversations I've had with both Branus and Romvolder. And I appreciate having them both. They oftentimes can say the same thing, but from slightly different angles. And I may pick up half of it from one and half from the other. So, and they're very receptive to the things that I'd like to suggest. Was like, well, have you thought about this? And they're both very there. So they're both very open, and then they're also both very knowledgeable. So I'm going to say Branus and Romvolder. That feels like such a boring answer. Everyone's answer.
Well, but it's everyone's answer because they are so good at understanding what they're doing and being able to articulate it. I mean,
I aspire to that. That is actually part of my legitimate. I wish to be a trainer on par with them, and I've got a long road ahead of me. I want to be like Sean, and I want to be like Branus, and I want to be like Romvolder, and some of the other really great high-tier fighters who also can teach and train the game. So first thing I do is I got to become a high-tier fighter.
Well, I think you're there. 6 crowns is a lot. So, all right. What's your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
That's a great question. It's not one I prepared for.
It can be fantasy.
Oh, it will have to be. I don't know if you picked this up on me, but the things that I love about the SCA, history's in the top 10. It's not near the top.
Right.
I'm old school, I guess. I'm a Holy Grail guy. It influenced me before I found the SCA, and it's influenced me afterwards. It's influenced me on how I want to do courts. It's my funny bone. And so, yeah, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the greatest historically accurate historical drama ever made.
It's a classic.
Fight me.
Fight you. If you could add a rule to the rules of the list, what would it be? I think we probably already went over this with your trigger, but
so I would like to somehow destigmatize the notion and value that both the marshalate and the chivalry can bring to a crownless tournament. I do not believe that it is wrong to say, hold, get in really close to the fighters. Hey guys, there are a lot of people watching and they're probably very confused right now. I'm kind of confused as a marshal. Could you just sort of either explain what's going on to me privately or, to everyone else? And let's get back on track here. I've had people say, how dare you question my honor? As the role of the marshal should not question the honor of someone. I understand that, and I think there's some value to that. I always see it the other way around. I believe as a marshal, if I actually have to get in there and have that conversation, I am trying to protect your honor. I wish for it to remain, and I want you to stay in high regard both to me and to everyone else here. And, you can make or break your reputation in Crown List. And I wish to protect that for people. And perhaps we should just let them get the bad reputation. I don't think we should. And I think that it's the role of the marshal and the chivalry to very tactfully and politely protect the honor of the fighters who are engaged.
I agree. And the more we do it, the less stigma is attached to it.
Yes.
More it's that we care and we're not trying to judge you, right? So anyway, I am 100%. What is your favorite tournament format?
So my favorite tournament, I'm going to give you two answers. I have two favorite tournaments in their format. The quick answer, because I know I'm going to run out of time. Meridia's has an event called Meridian Grand Tourney. Even though with a fancy name like that, it is very much open to everyone to go and fight in the tournament. They very much would like for people to come from all over the known world and fight in their tournament. It starts off with a melee style tournament. It's almost like a melee bear pit where you have three distinct lines. You don't know who's going to be on your side, and then you run in and do 3-on-3 versus the other person, and they're just keeping scores for total wins from each of the people. So there can be one winner by the end of that tournament. They qualify for the grand tourney. Then there is a single sword tourney or some variation of that, and that person and this person who comes in second qualify for the grand tourney. Same thing in the other tournament. Then there's another tournament. So these tournaments are run right after the other, and it's also the most pageantry filled tournament that they do. That's the one that everyone wants to get their banners and stuff ready for. So it's beautiful. Always period pavilions and banners everywhere. So that's 2 tournaments already and 4 champions. Then they might do a great weapons tournament. Then they might do a tournament, whatever weapon style you want. And it actually is a raising money tournament. They ask for a $20 donation, but there's plenty of people there to donate for the fighters who might not have that. They raise a ton of money. All the money that's raised in that tournament goes to the fighter who won's county or municipality city of choices shelter for battered women and children. And we get to actually put our chivalry on display and actually put real muscle to it. So all these tournaments are held. They have 5 tournaments throughout the day, and everyone qualifies for the grand tournament. Then the populace chooses a champion, the crown chooses a champion, the Order of the Laurel chooses a champion, the various orders choose a champion, and we wind up having a 16-person tournament, and then they have one more tournament, and that person is the Meridian Grand Champion for the year. And that to me is so much fun. It's so beautiful, and it includes that Order of the Chalice tournament that is the fundraiser that does such good work. And then pure sports nerdy fighting format. I love Candlemas in the mid-realm. Big pools, 10, 12 people, everyone fights everyone. They keep the top 8. Next round, they just keep moving it down. They might change the thing. So you fight all day long. It's in a gym. There are no banners. It's my one time of the year that I would like to go for pure stick jockdom and just fight as many people as I possibly can, and then hope to prove victorious. And it's the only tournament that I've ever fought in that I wanted to win that I've never won. I've come in twice, a couple of times, but I come in second twice. Such a toughie.
Yeah, that's the one people sort of joke that it's the Branos Invitational, right? Like,
I've heard that.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite event?
Penzic.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty much got some of everything, and it's also not a real SCA event. It's great. It's got everything.
All right.
It's got elves and vampires, and it's got pirates, and it's got parties, and it's got tournaments, and it's got two chucks. It's some of everything.
Yeah, definitely. If you could have any helmet, regardless of cost, what kind would it be?
My helmet.
Your helmet?
My helmet. My helmet that I got after I did my ducal reign was made by it was made by Sir Richard Wolfwood of Dark Knot Armory, and I kind of took something I wanted out of an Osprey book and said I kind of would like it to look like this and a little bit of that, and then he went and created it and made this fantastic helmet. And then Master Vortigern of the Crafty Celts blinged all the brass and bronze up. I've got hounds across my face. I've got raven nasal and raven eyebrows, and my helmet is the helmet that I want. And there are some amazing artisans that I think that I would like to have a helmet from, but it wouldn't be my helmet. It would just be the helmet they made for me. So my helmet is my helmet, and that's all the helmet I ever need.
Cool. It's Saturday morning at Estrella, and several people want to talk to you about last night. What did you do?
Well, anymore. I went home early and forgot to come back after my shower, and they were wondering where I was. Uh, I unfortunately treat Estrella almost like um, a day trip event. Everyone who lives here says they live 15 minutes away. I have timed it from my door of the tent, from the door of my house, and it's right at 15 minutes if I can get traffic just right. So, uh,
You can sleep in your own bed and have your own shower. It's hard to give that up.
this is like every time I'm like, okay, I'll be back. I'm just going to go get a shower and I'm going to hang out with Amber and the kids for a little bit and I'll be back.
Nice. All right.
I never come back.
Who's your favorite fight ever?
As an example, I'm going to go back to His Grace Branos. As an example, the first Candlemas I ever fought in, we didn't know each other. I don't even know if we knew of each other. But we wound up being on our knees after a long period of fighting. Then we wound up with him getting the victory shot in after a long period of fighting. And I didn't care at all that I lost. I knew that I had found a friend, a brother, a true friend, a true brother. I knew that I had just met a person that was going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life. And I hadn't said words. I haven't even exchanged words with them yet. And I'm so glad that when our helmets came off and we got a chance to meet, that he was actually a good person. Because otherwise, I'd be like, oh man, I love this dude. He's a total ass. But I had to fall in love with him. We had that fight.
Nice.
I've had a number of other fights that way that I have become lifelong friends with those people because of a pickup fight or a fraternity fight somewhere. And when people ask, why do you do it? That's part of the reason.
Definitely. All right. And then the bonus question is, who is the cleanest fighter in your kingdom?
I'm fortunate that there are a number of very clean fighters in the kingdom of Adenvelt. And I was told when I moved here that I was going to have to get used to a lot of changes because Meridies is probably known world the lightest hidden kingdom and probably the bitchiest about it. But I didn't have to actually change very much. If anything, I felt like people maybe moved towards me since I've got here, which is, it may just be a perception, but I think the cleanest fighter in our kingdom is probably His Highness Zipster. Because he is so conscious of the weight of getting something wrong like that, it would truly eat him up if someone told him or he found out later that he had missed a shot. It would, he would try to find ways of making it right. He would make something for the person that, that's the kind of thing that he would do. But I believe because he's such an amazingly good guy at heart that it comes out also as making him such a clean fighter.
Yeah. I love, we talked to him and his brother Gabe probably a month ago now.
That was great. I saw that.
Yeah, I just love both of their attitudes when, like, growing up second gen in the SCA and how they've paid it forward, and their attitude about including new people, and both of them on the field, they're just joys, and I love them both. They're both just awesome.
Yeah. I don't know what virtue that is, but I greatly value and treasure in a person their desire to be clean.
Yeah.
Beyond winning.
Well, thank you again. I've really enjoyed this. I mean, really, I wasn't feeling good today, and you have just turned my day around. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time. And this has been just very pleasant for me. Just a treat. So
thank you, virtual SCA.
Yep. All right.
And I look forward to seeing everyone. Stay safe, please.
Yeah,
and hey, real quick, take this fucking shit seriously, people. This is a real pandemic going on. And if you people are goofing off thinking that there's, just stop it. Don't hurt people. That's what we've learned from being in the SCA. Don't hurt other people. So wear your damn mask.
You heard it here. All right.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See you later. Bye-bye.